Vice President, thank you very much for being with us.
Good morning,
Getting
John.
used to that.
Good morning, John.
Let's start with the executive order on immigration. A federal judge has now blocked it. There has been criticism even from Republicans who like the policy, just don't like the rollout. Is it time to start over?
It's not time to start over at all. During the course of the campaign and since the outset of this administration, President Trump has made it clear he's going to use his authority as president under the law to put the safety and security of the American people first, especially when it comes to protecting this country from the threat that radical Islamic terrorism poses to our families and our communities. The executive order is on a solid constitutional and statutory foundation. One court in Boston confirmed that. Another court in Washington came to a different decision, but we're very confident that as we move through the process of these appeals, that the president's authority in this area will be upheld, and we'll continue to take such actions as are necessary to put the safety and security of the American people first.
Let me ask you about that judge, the federal judge in Washington. The president referred to him as a, quote, so-called judge. And the president can criticize anybody he wants. Criticism is one thing. In this instance, the big distinction is the president of the United States is calling into question the legitimacy of the judge and whether he has a legitimate role to make the decision he made. Is it right for the president to question the legitimacy of this judge? Not the ruling, not the opinion, not the policy, but the legitimacy.
Every president has a right to be critical of the other branches of the federal government, as you noted. The simple fact is, I think the American people welcome the candor of this president, and the president and our whole administration, frankly, are frustrated because the law could not be more clear here, John. Not only his constitutional authority to conduct foreign policy for this country, but clear statutory authority in federal law today gives the president the ability to determine who is given access to this country and who is not. And in this case, the president used a list the Obama administration and the Congress identified of 7 countries compromised by terrorism. It's within his authority to do it. And it's just frustrating to see a federal judge in Washington state conducting American foreign policy or making decisions about our national security.
But I want to go back to this word legitimacy, because that's different than just having a difference of opinion. And the reason I bring this up is this president has been very sensitive to anyone who would question his legitimacy. Last time you were here, you and I talked about Congressman John Lewis questioning the president's legitimacy, and you said really it was out of line for John Lewis, somebody of his stature, to question the legitimacy of the president. So why is it in line for a president to question the legitimacy of a judge and what a judge is doing?
John, I don't think he was questioning the legitimacy of the judge.
Well, when he calls him a so-called judge, how do you interpret that?
As soon as that order came out, the Department of Homeland Security fully complied with it. We went to the courts to seek a stay. We're going to, the first of this week, go to the Court of Appeals to not only get the stay, but to win on the merits. And we're confident that we will win in the interest of the security of the American people. This was more, I know, John, but this was more about the president simply expressing a frustration with a judge who is involving himself in the clear prerogatives of the president of the United States.
But it's just when the president speaks, his words matter. And I guess the reason also is when I talked to the president, then he was just a candidate, in January of 2016, he talked about the President Obama's executive order on immigration. And he said this to me, quote, "The courts actually took the step and did something that was very surprising, and they did the right thing," which is to say the courts stepped in and stopped President Obama's executive order on immigration. So if it was good when they stopped President Obama, how can it not be legitimate for them to step in and pause in this instance?
I think it's a great comparison, John. It's a very fair one on your part, as usual. In that case, President Obama was clearly taking action that was within the purview of the legislative branch. Congress had not acted in that regard, and so he attempted to use executive authority to implement laws the Congress had not passed. The president's executive order that the judge in Washington State issued an order upending is fully consistent with statutory law that's been passed by the Congress of the United States of America. So the comparison here, I think, is dramatic. It's consistent. And that's why we're very confident in the interest of the national security and the safety of the American people, we're going to prevail in court.
That you'll win in court. Let me ask you about Congress. I've talked to a lot of Republicans this week, again, who are on your side on the policy. But they and people I talked to in the administration, in addition to American allies, there's been a lot of criticism of this executive order and the way it was carried out. Any of those criticisms valid?
Well, at the outset of an administration that is as busy keeping our promises to the American people as this one, we'll concede that sometimes the usual Washington niceties of informing members of Congress were not, fully implemented as they've been in the past. But I have to tell you, the American people, I think, are grateful to see from literally the day of the inauguration that we have in President Trump a leader who's been taking steps every day to get this economy moving, to put the safety and security of the American people first, to roll back the kind of regulations that are stifling economic growth. And on this immigration issue, the president was determined, working with the Justice Department, working with the Department of Homeland Security, to take executive action that would suspend immigration from countries that we know are compromised by terror. It was the right thing to do. The American people welcome it. And I truly do believe as we go forward, we'll see the legal foundation of that affirmed by our highest courts.